whatever. I
Yep.
can edit a lot. So, all right, here we are online with Tony Licata, Anthony Licata, Tony Licata. We were just talking about what I should call you, and I'm going to call you both. I'm just going to bounce around, so people are going to be
Perfect.
listening and like, wait, is he talking to two different people or the same one? Welcome to the Orvis Hunting and Shooting Podcast. How are you? Where are you? How are you? What's going on?
I'm great, Reed. Thanks for having me. I am here this morning in Bozeman, Montana, and we're having a rare thing for Montana this year, and that's a lot of snow right now. It's been very dry out here, out west all winter, but we're in the middle of a snowstorm now.
Yeah, so I was hearing, from our fishing buddies out your way that it's been super dry. And what is that? When we hear that it's super dry, meaning the snowpack isn't very deep, or what's going on
Yeah,
otherwise?
right. There's not a very deep snowpack. There's just been little snow all winter, and that causes all kinds of problems. For forest fires, fishing, right? To simplify, all summer long that snow stays up in the high country and slowly melts and feeds the rivers. There's a big runoff early, but it just stays and keeps feeding the rivers. And if we don't have that snowpack, we end up in the summer with rivers that are low, that are warm. A lot of hoot owl restrictions where we can't fish. For the
Yep.
safety of the trout.
Yeah. So what is it with the snow that you're getting now? Like, are you in the clear? Or do you need a lot more to get?
No, we need a lot more. I'm no meteorologist, but I don't think we're gonna catch up. With the snowpack where we should be. Hopefully, the tail end of winter here will gain some ground back and be in a different place. But
Yeah.
it's going to take quite a bit to catch
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Seems like the way of the world these days. I feel like every
Yeah.
year this conversation seems to happen. But anyway, we will press on somehow. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. You and I met this fall for the first time, but do you remember back in the days of talk radio, and they would be like, first time caller, long time listener. So I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like this is our kind of that for me, where I've been admiring your work for a long time. We finally got to meet this fall out in South Dakota, did some hunting together. That was awesome.
Yeah, fun.
Talk a little bit about that. But the reason I had been aware of your work and the way I had known of you was that you and I are approximately the same age, or generally speaking. But you had this really incredible career in the big time outdoor media space, meaning that, from the time you were a pretty young person, and we're going to go into your background, you entered really that upper echelon of print media, arguably at the end of an era, really, where print was
Yeah.
still king, where Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, what else? Sports Afield. These big print publications that were available in every kiosk in every airport around the globe. Barnes and Noble, and all the places that print existed. You were there when that was still happening. So
Yeah.
what I'd love for you to do is talk a little bit about your career and your background and how you landed at a really young age at a pretty high level in that space.
Yeah, Reed, I wish I could tell you it was all part of the grand plan and that I was diligent and dedicated and achieved all my goals, but that's not how it worked out. You're right, I did get to those brands pretty young in my career, and it was a very fortunate thing for me. I really started, I guess, could start my story with Field and Stream specifically, and that was the first magazine I ever got a subscription to when I was a kid. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania in a family of outdoors people. Hunting, fishing, it was what we did. It was what all our neighbors did. My school closed for the first day of deer season, that kind of place. So,
Yeah.
when I was, I think 11, you could hunt at 12 in Pennsylvania at the time. When I was 11, my brother-in-law got me a subscription to Field and Stream magazine. And I just loved it and could not wait for every issue to come and poured through it. So, I kind of have a connection to that magazine going back a long time. Did I ever think I was going to work there? No. As I said, I wish I had put that much thought into it. Really what happened is I've always been the kind of person who loves to read and to write, whether it's books, fiction, nonfiction, magazines. And so that's kind of where my career path took me. It's what I studied in college. I
So did
major.
you just yeah, did you do
Yeah.
journalism or were you creative writing or what was your
No, I did English, an English major.
Okay.
To my parents' chagrin, they wanted something a
Right.
little more practical.
Right.
They might have been right, uh, but I was. It was the thing that I always did the best in, and I was interested in. So I studied. I majored in English, and when I was nearing graduation, starting to think about, well, geez, now I have to actually earn a living with this degree. And so I was looking to get into publishing, and at the time, New York City was really the hub for a lot of big publishing. And so out of college, I moved from Pennsylvania to New York City to get a job in publishing. And really quickly, I got pretty lucky because I saw a position for an editor with a company called Harris Publication. They did a lot of small gun and firearm magazines and some hunting and fishing magazines. And they were really looking for someone who had extensive experience with hunting. I don't know if you could call 22-year-old me having extensive experience with hunting, but I had hunted
Right.
my whole life,
Right.
which was a lot better than a lot of people in New York, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got in there and found I really liked the work. And pretty quickly, I saw an opening at Field and Stream and went for it and got the job and started there as an associate editor. I was probably like 2 years out of school.
Yeah.
So I started as a junior editor on the staff, and I was very lucky in that it was a big staff with some really talented people, and it was a really great environment to learn and to grow.
Yeah. So in my head, when I hear these stories, and in my head, I think of young Tony Licata coming into this in the big city, bright lights, big city kind of deal. But what was the environment actually like? I guess probably different. I would imagine with you said Harris Publications. When you
Yeah,
moved to Field and Stream,
yeah,
when you got to Field and Stream, literally paint the picture. Was it a giant skyscraper, ride the
yeah,
elevator, wear a suit kind
yeah.
of thing? Really?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I started just after they got rid of the requirements to wear a suit, right? So I didn't
Okay.
have to wear a suit, but a tie was encouraged, and dress pants and all that. Yeah, it was. The office was on Two Park Avenue, on Park and 32nd Street, 1920s Art Deco building, beautiful, up in the elevator to the 10th floor. And it was a big publishing company at that time. We did a lot of magazines, not just Field and Stream, but also Outdoor Life, Popular Science, Golf, many, many magazines. So, now, not to like jump ahead in time, but when so many folks work remotely, and so much is virtual, which I appreciate. I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was to be in an office surrounded
Mm,
by mentors and knowledgeable people.
mm,
Paint the picture. I went in for the interview, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in front of David Petzel, and
hmm.
he's interviewing me. And this is Field and Stream's legendary gun writer, who I'd been reading since I was a little kid,
All
right?
right.
And then I'm
Right.
sitting in front of him, and Petzel's a character. I'm prepared to talk all kinds of hunting and gun stuff, right? I prepped for the interview, made sure like I knew if he's going to ask me a tricky gun question, I'd know it. But he sees on my resume I took Shakespeare in college. He's like, "Well, tell me, what are your favorite Shakespeare plays?"
Huh. Yeah.
I was not prepared for that.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
That's wild. So, and in the office, so David Petzel's there every day, guys
yes,
like that, or who else? Who else was there as the backbone of the,
yeah.
so the legendary folks that were there?
Sure. Well, Duncan Barnes was the editor in chief at the time, and Slayton White was there as well. Bob Brister was still working as shooting editor. He wasn't in the office; he was down in Texas, but I got to meet him and work with him a few times. Petzel was there in the office. I worked regularly with Phil Borgelli, with John Merwin. To have these guys who had been making a career out of this for a long time and been really successful, to be able to spend time with them and learn from them was really great.
Yeah. And were those bigger name people? I mean, this is probably a crude question to ask, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
fascinated by this stuff, so you can dodge if you need to. But I'll give you some context for the question. Years ago, we had in the library in my college a book, and it was, I think, Fishing with McLean, and it was basically a biography of A.J. McLean, who wrote
Mm-hmm.
the encyclopedia. What was
Yep.
it, the Fishing Encyclopedia, or whatever it was, and it was depicting his life, and it was his story, and there was a bunch of photos. And I remember this one photo in particular where he's dressed very nicely, he's walking, carrying his leather luggage across the
Mm-hmm.
bridge from his island in one of the Catskill streams, going to the
Right.
airport to fly to Timbuktu to, but
Right.
it was of an era when well-known writers in the outdoor space, or just writers in general in the magazine world, or in the publication kind of world, or newspaper people, or whatever, were affluent people. Like, they made a real living, and they could live in
Yep.
New York City and live well in New York City and do the whole thing. Was that still a thing when you were there, or were those guys living? Not to generalize, and I hate to ask the question because it sounds so gross, but I'm just curious. Was there still this air of like these executive people at these outdoor publications, particularly the people that were in leadership roles, were making good money, making a real
Yeah,
living? And
sure. Yeah, no,
yeah,
people were making a good living for sure. Um, you know, uh, when I started, I had a you know, low entry level salary, but it was a livable wage, right? Which
In New
is,
York City, which
yeah,
is
right.
yeah,
Barely, but it was
right.
livable, right? Which isn't always the case before. Yeah, I think, you think about like, oh man, the glory days, right? And you think, at least I do, like, oh, Mad Men-ish, right?
Right, yeah,
That
exactly,
era.
yeah. The three
And
martini lunches and whatever else, yeah.
yeah, and it was a little bit like that. Not to that extent, but especially with a magazine like Field and Stream, it was very large, 1.5 million circ, right, which is
Hmm.
really big.
Hmm.
At that time, it was pretty easy to make money with a magazine. I think,
Yeah, yeah,
you really had to mess it up not to make money. So we were very well supported. We had big staffs. The workload was a lot different. And I'm trying to think how best to describe this because it's going to sound like, oh, we didn't have to work hard. That's not true, right? But we had to focus on a print magazine that came out every month.
hmm
We had a big staff, right? And we took our standards very seriously, and everything it had to be of the highest quality.
hmm
So it took a lot of work and good writers and talent, photographers, but we had the time really to work on it. I
right.
think back when I started, I had to edit 2 columns and another page every month. Like that's all I had to do, right? It was a lot of work. You work on it to get it right, and that's something that's really changed.
Yeah,
Obviously, we have websites, social media, videos. There's like this constant flood of content that you have to produce
yeah,
without as big a staffs because the business model's kind of changed. So it's when I started, I guess to sum it up, it was really an era of quality over
mm,
quantity,
hmm
right?
hmm
And being able to have that time to do that work, to to work on a piece and have it where you think it's really good, and then the rest of the staff say, we can make it better. What if we could do this?
yeah.
Which a lot of that is lost now. Things have to be so quick and turn
That's
around, and
it.
there's
I
there's
love that.
not the support.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, because I feel that, and even in the arc of my very limited freelance career, but I've seen it too, that I feel as though as we've become as a species more focused on this flood of content and just a very cursory digestion of it all. It's just coming,
Yes.
washing over us. And it's like, okay, I'll taste that, I'll taste that, I'll taste that, I'll
Right.
taste that. But there's no really, I would say there's no emphasis on pausing, really taking the time to make something exquisite, or make something perfect, or make something even just really intentional. And I would imagine that it was a very different world not that long ago when you could take that kind of time to really make something as good as it could be. And I think you feel it. I mean, I see it and I feel it in publications too, where what we're being, and this is not a knock on what the audience wants, but I do feel as though we're being asked to produce more and more quick hit,
Yes.
bulleted, boom, boom, boom. There's no narrative arc. There's no
Yeah.
structure. There's no. It's much more of a, I don't know. I just find it's changed very quickly, and I remember feeling that even in, again, in my time writing. I remember feeling it happen where the longer form narrative or longer form creative essay or whatever was sort of like, meh, just give me 400 words with a bunch of bullets and how to, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom,
Right.
yeah, and
Right.
totally changed. Yeah,
Right.
wild.
It did change. And we had, storytelling was emphasized, personalities, writing with personality. And, we always we always took service journalism very seriously, teaching people how to do something or informing them about a product. But because that's a very valuable thing, right? But the when I started, that was just part of it, and sometimes the emphasis would go too far that way, where it was all about products, telling people about the latest, coolest, newest stuff. Right?
Right.
When I first started at Field and Stream, you couldn't mention a company's name in a story.
Are you
You
serious?
literally, yes, I'm absolutely serious, which I'm not sure that should be the way it should be, but like if you were writing a story about a hunt and you could not mention the rifle, right?
Huh.
Unless you were writing about that rifle, right? If
Right.
the
Right.
story
Right.
was like a review of that rifle, that'd be one thing. But like, no, hey, I lined up my such and such scope, and
Right.
right, it's
Right.
not allowed, right?
Right. Wild, huh? It's so different. And so as you're in that environment and you're relatively new and you're putting in your time and you're growing in the role, were you getting asked to, well, two questions. One, were you getting asked to provide content? Were you being asked to write pieces? And then also how was content or how were assignments doled out? How did it work? Because I came at the magazine writing side of things in such a non-typical way, and because I just didn't know any better, so I would just send in finished manuscripts and just say, hey, do you
Yeah,
want this, and
right.
which is a fairly atypical way of going about it.
Yep.
So with the fact that you said you had to put out a new magazine every month, how did you determine what was going to go in that magazine?
Yeah, we would have editorial meetings where we brainstorming meetings where we plan right for an issue if it's got a certain theme, if it's a certain time of year, and we know there's certain stories we have to cover. That'd be part of it. Some of it would be articles like you said that kind of come in and that we weren't necessarily planning on and didn't know we were looking for. And whether they submit it as a full article or just a query, that's like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Hmm.
So you get those surprises from writers. Like in general, it's a little bit almost of a partnership, right? The editorial staff would really come up with a lot of ideas and then know which writers to assign them to.
Mm.
And then the flip side of that is plenty did come directly from writers. And the way that would usually work is an editor would be assigned a writer. Like that's kind of your writer, right?
Mm.
Like Ken Schultz, who was a fishing editor there, he was my writer. So Ken and I would talk. Here's the other thing that's changed. Man, I think about the hours I'd spend on the phone with
Really?
freelance writers back then.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
working out of their home, they love to talk.
Yeah.
These days it's all text and emails. But anyway, you'd talk with your writer. They'd come up with some ideas. You'd come up with some. You'd work them out till you had like a good slate, and then I would take it to my bosses and say, "Hey, I want Ken to do this, this, this. This would be good for this issue." Or I know we're doing a big bass package in the spring. What if Ken does this? That sort of thing.
Hmm.
And so for me writing, when I started, that wasn't an emphasis for me. I wanted to write, but my bosses, and they were right, recognized that it was probably more important for me to develop the skills of working with writers and conceiving of an idea and working with a writer to bring that to life and then packaging the magazine. Everybody wants to write, but those other skills are really important. So whenever I wrote at the beginning, it was always things that I wanted to write and that I would pitch, right? Whether it was maybe a story of mine or something that happened, or it was something like, frankly, that I wanted to do, right? I really wanted to, at one point, do a spot and stock bow hunt for black bears in southeast Alaska, right? Who wouldn't want to do that, right? I really wanted to do that. So how do I do that? I came up with a really good angle and a good story and put a pitch together and gave it to my editor, and then I was allowed to go do that and write that story.
Huh.
So that's
And
how
that
a lot of my writing started.
and that was the same process you were in on the editorial side or on the editor side, where your writer Ken Schultz, you said, was your
Yeah, he was
primary-
one. He was one of mine.
So he would come to you. You all would brainstorm this, that, and the other. You would land on an idea, and then you would basically say, "Okay, go." If he hadn't done it already, or
right.
you would put a photographer or whatever with him and
Yes.
say, "Okay, off you go, buy your plane tickets and make it
Yep.
happen."
Yep,
Wow.
that's right. Like, Eddie Nickens was one of my writers, and he's a good one for an example. He'd be like, "Hey, what if I drive over this little creek he lives down in North Carolina all the time, and it's supposedly full of panfish and it's choked with brush. I'm just gonna float down this little know nothing creek in a canoe and fish for panfish. Oh, that's fun, right?
Right.
So then you set that up, and yeah, sometimes they were a little more. Like Eddie would also pitch trips. We're gonna canoe down an barely floated river in Alaska, right?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Those were a
Yeah.
little more complicated, a little more. It costs some more money. You gotta really got it dialed in. But yeah, that's how it would often work.
Huh. Oh, that's so interesting. Did you have many? Well, a couple questions. What was the first one? You sort of mentioned the one about the spawn stock, but what was the first one that you pitched that landed? That you were like,
I pitched a story about going hiking far into the Catskills and camping and turkey hunting.
oh, nice.
And that was the angle that, like, to get into some different birds and have a bit of a different time. Here's like a bit of a backcountry turkey hunt. So
Yeah.
that was the first story I pitched for me to write,
Yeah.
and they liked it. So my brother and I, figured out our stuff and packed up the truck and drove up to the Catskills and camped and wrote a piece about it. I did not kill a turkey. That would have made this story better.
I was gonna ask, yeah. Oh, that's funny.
But
you had a good time. Yeah, you got
we had a
started.
good time, and we told a good story, and it was, I would like to think, somewhat relatable and different, right? That's a lot what we're looking for. It's
Yeah.
you want something that the audience, maybe they're not going to do it, but they're interested, or something that they could, I don't know, just kind of relate to.
When you were doing that and you were working with writers and you were getting pitches and having conversations and so on and so forth, you were pretty young at first.
Yeah.
You were pretty
Yes.
pretty early in your career, and you were dealing with some real icons. How hard was it for you to say, "Yeah, that's not a good idea," or "No, I don't know if that must have been an awkward position to be in."
It seems like it would be, but it wasn't at Field and Stream, just because it was the culture. Like, there was a culture of rigor, right? Like, it's got to be really good, and every writer needs an editor, and not every idea is a good one. So the writers kind of expected it. We would have writers who would start writing for Field and Stream, and they had written for some other outdoor publications. And I'm not knocking them. They may have been smaller publications, not the staff that we had. But the writers would say, I turned something in there. They don't touch a word. I turn it into you guys. And it's like, whoa, you're asking me for this and that. And so I think everybody kind of liked that kind of culture because people, they want to do their best work, right? And at first, sometimes people would be a little pushed. But when they realize, like, man, they're making my work better. and
Yeah.
that's the culture here, then most people were real pros about it. There was a couple times where it's like a writer would disagree, and oftentimes they would be right, and you got to kind of work that out.
Yeah.
But it was very much a culture of like, hey, let's work together to make this thing the best it could be.
Yeah. So interesting. I excuse me. I love having a good editor because it, to me, the way from a writer's perspective, and again, not in league with some of the greats that you all were working with, but to have a great editor, and editing itself is, as you know, there are great writers that aren't great editors and great editors that aren't great writers. But
Right.
when you have a great editor that can teach you stuff. I mean, really, that's to me, that's what it comes down to is when I can get someone to read my stuff and give it back to me and say, "Hey, this is you're doing this again. This is one of those little, I don't know, crutches that you use time and again, or things that you repeat." It's an opportunity for you to get this education and become better at the craft that's really hard to get. And so in a sense, it's affirming, I guess, to get stuff that comes back untouched and you're like, oh, but look at me, I'm so good that no one
Yeah.
had. But there's also there's something really valuable and I don't know, just special about having a good editor make your stuff better.
Yeah,
Really.
I mean, look, every writer needs an editor. It's it's just a fact.
Yeah.
I've edited some fantastic writers, Jim Harrison, you
Mm.
know, and Harrison needed very little, but like everybody benefits from
Yeah.
another reader, a set of eyes, and it's obviously it's beyond grammar, and it's everything. It's construction and tone, and what questions weren't asked, and it's kind of the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so fascinating. Did you have many people that you we're gonna get away? I love these questions because it's like you're the inside, got the inside line on all this. But were there people in your tenure there at Field and Stream where Harrison being a good example, were there writers that you were actively wanting to work with and would pursue? And did that
Yes.
work? Like if they were outside of, because he wouldn't really, I would think, fall into the ilk of a standard Field and Stream
No.
contributor. Yeah.
No. 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 So yeah, people like Harrison, and Tom McGuane,
Hmm.
right? They were people who wrote for us and who we'd pursue and knew, and but they were a little different, right? They only wanted to write what they wanted to write, and which was fine, and not really workhorse writers. We'd have certain writers. It's like, hey, we need you to write about deer again, right?
Right.
Guess what? It's the rut again.
Right. Right.
But not those guys, right? They
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
tell us stories that they were interested in. There were ones like that. We didn't always get them. I always wanted Carl Hyacin to write for
Oh
Field and
yeah.
Stream, and
Yeah. Yeah.
was never able to make that happen.
Huh.
Yeah,
Just didn't. He had other
yeah. I don't know. He
irons
just
in the fire. Didn't
I
want to do it.
guess so.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Living in New York City, or being that Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, all those publications were nested in New York City. Did it feel disconnected to you? That's the other piece of this whole picture that I find interesting, is that you would go to the office in a tie and dress pants, and
Yeah.
yet you're writing about these gritty, bloody,
Yeah.
expedition-y.
Right.
How did that all come together? What was that
Right,
like?
right from Park Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, for me personally, it wasn't too much of a problem, especially for the first several years there, for a couple reasons. One, I mean, I'm a country boy. I live in Montana now. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. So being in the city was an adjustment, right? But it was also, frankly, kind of fun to be in New York City in your 20s, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Working in
Yeah.
publishing, right? There's lots of people in action. So that made it a little better. But what really saved me is I had a car when I lived in New York City,
Yeah.
an old beat up car, but a car nonetheless.
What a car, yeah.
And so I could jump in that car on a Friday in 3 hours, be back to rural Pennsylvania at my deer camp, right? I would run up to the Adirondacks or the Catskills, right? So I had that escape where I was always doing things like that. And then also, there was a lot of travel for the job too, right? I'd go to Missouri turkey hunting or out west hunting mule deer. So, I was lucky that I got to hunt quite a bit despite living in New York City.
Hmm.
And it was important to me. I tried to balance, like, it's great to go on those work trips. Hey, I got invited to go out and hunt turkeys in Missouri. Wonderful.
Hmm.
But I always try to balance those with, like, kind of my own hunting and fishing, what I
Hmm.
like to do with my family, with my buddies at our camp,
Hmm.
just because I like to do that.
Hmm.
And if you spend, I just looked around in the industry and you could see people, writers or editors, who the only hunting or fishing they did was like on hunts, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Where they were kind of being hosted.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's fine, but there's also something rewarding about doing it on your own and with your own people. And I think doing it that way helped me really keep my finger on what hunting and fishing is about,
Hmm.
right? What the
Hmm.
what the average reader and person is doing. I try to have that balance where okay, I'm going to go around the country and sometimes the world to learn more and expand my idea of hunting and fishing, but always to kind of keep it grounded in like what I do as a regular person. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Absolutely. In fact, that really speaks to me because I feel as though I have had a tendency to go in that direction that you just described, which is I do travel a lot for work. I do get these incredible opportunities, and I feel very grateful that I have them. But I forget who it was who was talking about this. It might have been even Steve Ranella talking about it. But the essence of what he was saying, or whoever it was saying, was that you show up and you're just sort of the hired gun. You're not. You haven't done the scouting.
Yep.
You don't know the ground. You don't.
Yep.
If it's bird hunting, you didn't train the dogs. They're not your dogs.
Right.
You're just kind of there with a gun in your hand to do the transactional thing. And that's not to
Yes.
say there isn't some incredible value in being out on the land and building connection with the people you're with. And there
Sure.
is value there, but there is something also very, it doesn't always feel like it's yours. And
Yes.
I find that to be really actually worrying for me because I do wonder. I even look around the office, at Orbis to the degree that we go to, we do have a small group of people that still goes to the office. We're largely remote now, but I look at some of the folks that are younger than me that are in different roles at the company than I am that are really still grinding and hustling and driving all over the place on
Yeah.
weekends or driving around, before work, afterward, looking for turkeys or looking for where ducks are
Yeah.
flying or doing whatever. And I'm like, I don't do that anymore because
Yeah.
because I get a lot of opportunities and I've gotten pretty lazy about doing that stuff. But if at any point, and I, if at any point someone were to say, "Hey, I'm coming into town. Should we go? Let's go duck hunting." I'd be like, "Okay, I got some work to do because I haven't been paying
Yeah.
much attention. Like, we can probably figure it out." And that's a weird feeling, but particularly when you do identify, I think, as someone who is in the industry or someone who should be should have achieved a certain level of proficiency. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it was very wise of you and astute of you
Yeah.
to recognize that that was an important piece of balance to
Yeah,
keep.
I really did. It just, because look, I think an editor and a writer, one of their best tools is, I don't know, for lack of a better term, their gut, right? Their understanding of what's a good story and what people want.
Hmm.
And, the more you're disconnected from your audience's everyday reality, the harder it is to have that kind of gut. So I would always like, I kind of made a rule for myself for several years where it's like, I'm going to not miss my family deer camp in November.
Yeah,
Every other year, I'm going to make sure I go, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
right in the middle of the rut. It's a perfect time. Not I mean, it's not necessarily perfect time there because our deer camp is out in Western New York and big woods, old timber company. We kill a few bucks and some does, but they're small but that's not what it's about. We put up a wall
Right.
tent. I'm there with my brothers, my nephews, right? So I would make sure to do that as opposed to, oh, it's the rut. I could go to Iowa, right? And
Right.
shoot a big bruiser, right?
Right. Right.
You know, I didn't want to lose that. And
Yeah.
the other thing I tried to do is, when you're on a trip like that like as you said, everything's been kind of done for you. The scouting's been done. I always tried to think, and look, I was different, right? Because I was a writer and editor there to tell a story. I'm not a paying client there to have a good time. If you're there to have a good time, just have a good time, right? I always tried to like, okay, they're doing all the work, but I'm gonna help, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would be like, hey, you guys are gonna go put up stands or move a stand. I'll go with you,
Yeah.
right? Or they're gonna go pick up a deer that somebody got. I would go with them and
Yeah.
help them butcher the deer and talk to the guides or just ask a ton of annoying questions. Well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tried very much to take that approach.
Yeah.
And I think, if you go into a hunt with that kind of curiosity, even if you're not getting the reward that, oh man, I figured this all out and did it on my own, you get a different kind of reward in that you have this opportunity to go with someone who does something different and knows more. And if you don't just follow along and shoot, but actually engage, then you take some of their knowledge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that. That is the thing that I have found really valuable. It's funny though, as you were talking, when I first started getting the opportunities to go to some of these far flung places that I never dreamed I'd have the opportunity to go to. I remember I was in Alaska the first time, only time actually I've ever been to Alaska, and way out of my depth. Had been invited to this very fancy lodge. This is a fishing and shooting birds trip, but it's before I worked for Orvis. And I remember at dinner, a formal dinner sitting around the dining, and then I got up and was like, oh, I should help out. Went into the kitchen, tried to help do dishes, and they were like, this is very uncomfortable. Please get out of here. Like, don't. You're making everyone feel weird. Like you look like an idiot. It was definitely
yeah,
like,
no, it's true. It's a fine line.
It's a fine line, and I was not savvy enough to notice what that line was. But I learned. So, but yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think when you can, I also think when you express the interest in. From the perspective of being, whether you're a paying client or a writer or someone gets invited along on a trip or whatever, just being interested in what happens around the edges. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see, and to be curious about that, I think is really validating for the people who are providing you with the experience too.
Yes.
Just to pull back the curtain a little bit and say, oh yeah, this is what it looks like when we're feeding the dogs, and this is what it looks like when we're cleaning kennels, and this is what it looks like when we're hauling a deer out of the field or bringing it into the walk-in to hang up or what those little they just give so much more scope and breadth to the experience, and so just having the opportunity to see some of that stuff.
I mean, I'm by nature a curious person. I just always want to know, and I just feel like things are more fun and more interesting when you do it that way. And yeah, it's like I grew up in a dairy farming region, but then when I thought I knew what farming was, and then I went to the Midwest on some hunts that were on farms. The farmers were also outfitters, right? And I learned what like big Midwest ag is, right? Like, okay, that's different from the farm that I imagine, right?
Right, yeah, for
right.
sure.
And it's to travel to hunt and fish is a good opportunity to learn about a different part of our country or different people and how they live their life and what's important to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so moving forward, you rose through the ranks. You stayed at Field and Stream for quite a while. How many? 20 something?
Yeah, about 20 years. Yeah, yeah.
No, go ahead, and then so I want to make sure that we know that you're now in a different position at Cowboys and Indians magazine. Yes. But at the time you left Field and Stream, what was you were executive or senior?
I was the editorial director of what was the Bonnier Outdoor Group, which was Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, Shot Business, a trade publication we did, and some other publications. Basically, I became fairly early in my tenure. I became the editor-in-chief of Field and Stream, and held that position for about 10 years. But you know how it is when you're good at a job, they give you another one. So while I was editor-in-chief of Field and Stream, they also made me editorial director of Outdoor Life, which was owned by the same company. Very
Yeah.
strange situation.
Yeah.
Two, big magazines, kind of competitors owned by the same company. But
Right.
so I oversaw more than just field and stream. So yeah, I was there with that company in various capacities for about 20 years, and
Yeah.
maybe a little less. And I had been living in the New York area at that time, not New York City the whole time, but out in the burbs. And when I left, I was ready for something different, and also a different scene, different place. So I was able
Hmm.
to take my family, my young kids, and my wife, and move out to Bozeman, Montana, where I worked for Meat Eater for a few years as editor in chief.
Hmm.
And I've been living here since. And yeah, now I am the editor in chief of a magazine brand called Cowboys and Indians, which is a Western lifestyle magazine. It's Western culture, native life, epic stories. That's what we say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it was,
how?
yeah, go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just going to say, are you able to incorporate? Because I'm a new reader of Cowboys and Indians since I
Yeah.
met you, and have
Thank
been
you.
keeping an eye on it. Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it.
I need to get a subscription though. I do
Yes,
have
you
to.
do.
But anyway, sorry. The note to self. But um, but in that, what I've been noticing, and I think is interesting, is that in a lot of ways, though that's more of a storytelling slash lifestyle slash I don't know
Mm-hmm.
broader based uh, publication, a lot of the characters and a lot of the content lends itself to an adjacent hunt fish outdoor
Yes.
line of thinking and talking. Have you intentionally woven that in? Is that something that's interesting to you to do, or does it feel like when it's obvious, and when it's not, kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I've woven a little bit more of the hunting and fishing into the brand, but in balance. I'm not making it a hunting and fishing magazine or focused brand, but
Sure.
it's just natural. It's about life in the West. You don't have to spend much time out here in the West to realize most people hunt and fish, and that
Yeah.
it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an easy thing for us to include. It's just part of the whole package. It worked out well for me to join Cowboys and Indians since I do live in Montana in the West, and I'm raising my family here, and have been coming here my whole life. And it's nice to have some room to roam and talk about rodeo and talk about native tribes, talk about hunting and fishing, talk about art, all these cool things that kind of make up culture here in the West, and
Mm.
cover that. So it's been
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. I bet. That's
You know, it's,
amazing.
you know this, Reed, right? People say, get it, make your passion your job and you'll never have to work a day in your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no, right?
Work is still work. Yeah. It's
Work is
it's
still work. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was great that my job had me hunting and fishing all around the country and telling those stories. Yes. But work also includes, like, deliverables and managing a profit and loss statement and
right.
all kinds of hard work things.
Right.
So it's actually been kind of nice for me to have my passion of hunting and fishing untangled from that a little bit
Yeah.
in the last
Yeah.
few years. Like, now I could just go elk hunt here, and I'm not thinking about, oh, what am I going to get out of this, or I better take some video clips, or I need content.
Yeah.
I could just go elk hunt,
Yeah.
which is really, really, really nice.
It's so funny you say that. The thing that I remember, so I started, I think I had my first um, piece of writing published in, might have been 2009 or 2010, 2009, probably. There about somewhere in that neck of the woods. And so I started writing and sending stuff out for publication in 2008-ish, at the end of sort of 2008. And what I remember incredibly distinctly happening after I got my first piece published, well, it was actually two things. One, I couldn't talk anymore. Like, so let me give you some more. Let me explain that. But I used to be very. I used to work with kids. I used to work in education. I would have
Huh.
this banter. This just like blah blah
Uh-huh.
blah blah blah. Constantly talking, being clever, being witty, whatever, in
Yeah.
a very fifth grade humor sort of way. But
That's
it was all.
perfect.
Yeah, it was right. It was from my people, so it was good. So I could do that, and it was very easy. And I didn't think a lot about what I was saying. And as soon as I started getting stuff published, I started thinking about my words so much more, and it made talking a lot harder for me. And even now when I do this, and this is, you would say that I do a lot of these podcasts and have a lot of conversations, but I even
Yeah.
hear myself thinking about, and that's why I do what I just did, interrupt myself, because I'm so aware of what's coming out of my
Yeah.
mouth. Whereas before it was just a blah, 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 and it just
Yeah,
fell
right.
out, and it was fun.
Right.
It was fun to have that sort of banter. So that was one thing. The other thing that I found immediately, being that I was trying to get published in the outdoor space, and that's what I was writing for. I couldn't just go hunting or fishing without somewhere in the back of my mind thinking about how do I turn this into something
Yes.
that I can get published, paid for,
Yes.
professionalized somehow. And it
Yes.
was immediate, and it to a degree has never gone away.
Yeah.
That sense of, oh, am I doing this in such a way that I'm going to turn it into something? And it's really
Yes.
sad, frankly, for me to think that I struggle to just do the thing for the sake of doing the thing anymore,
Yeah.
which is just a
Yeah.
very strange place to be. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's exactly right. And so that has been a little bit of a benefit for me being at Cowboys and Indians in that it's not exclusively focused on hunting and fishing where it's like I have to think about like you said monetizing it professionally, making it
Right.
professional. Like I could just go with my my kids or my buddies and go screw around and have fun hunting and fishing like you're supposed to.
Like you did when you were little. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? So, thinking about pulling some of these threads together, you've made an incredible career in the print media space. You've seen a lot of people come and go. You've seen magazines come and go and change. I mean, Field and Stream being a great example
Yeah.
that I remember even in the last 10 years thinking Field and Stream's too big to, I don't want to say too big to fail, because
Yeah.
not that it failed, but too big to change. This is going to be a mainstay of every newsstand forever. And of course, that changed. Things
Yes.
went a different direction. And I think they're back in print a couple times here now, but nonetheless, a different ownership,
Yeah.
a whole different model. So where is it going? What do you think the future holds? Is there a pathway back? Is it what? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the question is. I think I just asked
Yeah,
it. But
and I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is. What's next? I mean, my career, like yours, has been all about constant change, and there's been plenty of things that I could have never predicted. you know,
hmm hmm
so I don't know. I would say a couple of things. I mean, one of the reasons you said Field and Stream is like too big to fail, like that's one of the reasons why it kind of did have to change because it was so big, right?
yeah,
Not to like get into the weeds with business, but it's really about kind of the business model changing, right? Advertising used to pay magazines big money. Now advertisers can spend pennies and reach people through
hmm
Google ads and all kinds of stuff, right? So being so big, it could not be that big anymore, right? And I think I bring that up because I think to talk specifically about print magazines, I think that's the case. I work for a print magazine. I don't think print all print magazines are going to go away or the ones that are around are just hanging on. I don't think that's the case at all. I just think that they're more niche products
hmm
with smaller audiences that have the successful ones have changed their mission. Whereas, for a while, Reed, you're talking about like all that short, bitsy stuff, how to that you had to do. Like, that doesn't really have much place in magazines anymore, if you ask me,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You can find all that online. Now with AI, you want to learn how to do something, it teaches you. So what that has done is allowed the print magazines that are around to lean into what they do best, which is that longer immersive storytelling.
mm
To lean into design and photography and illustration. We look at our world through this thing so often, right?
Hmm.
And to have a magazine where it's big, beautiful pictures and design and a longer story and a bit of a surprise. You're not going to look for it, but you didn't even know you wanted to know about this, and you are.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
that's, kind of the spot for the print part of a magazine. Of
Hmm.
course, we're like most magazines and we do tons of social media, digital content, videos, podcasts, the whole deal.
Hmm.
You can't just do print anymore. But speaking specifically of print, like that's how I see it, right? It's
Hmm.
that lean back, kind of a little bit more of a luxury immersive experience.
Hmm. I love that. I think that's really true. And I do think it's almost the pendulum swing, right? When you get so far to the side of quick hit, small form,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, the bulleted stuff, or just what's visible on the whatever the size of a phone screen is. I think there is that rebound back to
Yes.
what about this thing that could touch and feel and sit with and
Yes.
yeah, I don't know, take on an airplane and really take my time with or whatever it was, sit
Yes.
in the waiting room of a doctor's office. So
Yeah.
so
Have it
I
sit
love
on
that.
your table for a while, pick it up, when you want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot, and I also think that you know to lean into authenticity and people is a smart move, right? With so much of what you see on social media, so much of it isn't authentic, and you could tell it's not authentic. There's people on social media who are their authentic selves, and those people tend to do very well and have good followings, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
what people want, right? But there's a lot of people who aren't, a lot of content that's not,
Right.
and I think by focusing on people and authenticity and real stories, there's a hunger for that, and those things always perform well for us, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a guiding star.
Yeah. It- One last question or another question that's somewhat related but somewhat different. You were also witness to, I think, the outdoor industry, if you will, outdoor media, outdoor industry, when it was still relegated to, let's call it outdoor media, when it was still relegated to its own little place off to the side of things. And certainly, let's see, a magazine like Sports Illustrated that used to have a lot of outdoor content that pivoted to baseball, basketball, football, that kind of focus. But then you were also around and directly involved with what I would say was a very unique sea change that happened, I would say, with Meat Eater, with people like Joe Rogan talking about hunting, with some of these more mainstream characters making some of those outdoor activities more mainstream. Was that did that surprise you?
No, it didn't surprise me. What surprised me is, I wasn't kind of far-seeing enough or smart enough to see the impact that things like personality-driven social media or podcasts could do for an
Hmm.
audience, right?
Hmm.
How people can connect to those. And I think that's, you know, there's always been celebrities who hunted or fished or well known people. We never, I never was really that interested in that
Hmm.
angle.
Hmm.
Like, who cares? Great. He hunts, and, if there's an interesting story, sure. But then seeing how, like, someone like Rogan can move the needle and get so many people talking about hunting or interested in it, that was something I didn't really foresee,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
was kind of surprising to me. And I don't know that I still understand it,
Yeah.
But look, if somebody sharing their passion in that way, in that kind of personal way through social media or podcasts, and a big name gets more people interested, I mean, that's great. It's not a criticism.
Yeah. I guess what's always interesting to me is what what is that secret sauce that changes perception or maybe makes something really appealing in a wide way to an audience that wasn't aware of it before. So for
Yeah.
example, what I would say is well, Joe Rogan bow hunting for sure, Meat Eater just with Meat Eater
Yeah.
being the
Yeah.
juggernaut that it is. But even looking back at, like, I mean, you remember because you were in the thick of it when A River Runs Through It came out and just
Oh yeah. Sure.
blew up the fly
Yes.
fishing
Yeah.
industry for 5 years
Yes.
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, radical, and it makes sense. But I also would never have said, "Oh, a movie about fly fishing is going to catch on to the
I mean,
masses."
how do you predict that stuff? How do you
Yeah.
predict what catches on and what people get, catches people's attention? Yeah, it's a great question. And you mentioned Meat Eater. Like, to give Steve Ranella credit, I don't think anybody has done a better job at making the sports accessible and understandable and interesting to an audience, a non-traditional audience, or people who don't have any experience with it.
Hmm.
My thought was always, I just wanted to reach outdoorsmen, and I wanted to portray us in a great light, so the
Hmm.
rest of society could see, true light, but could see, what it's about. But people like Steve did it do that in a way that was welcoming and brought more people into the sport.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch again what that those are the things that surprise me when I
yeah,
when I look at it and I say, like, wow, I would never have thought that would have been palatable to this group of people.
yeah,
And then when it is, you're kind of like, oh, I wish I had thought that would have been a
yeah.
good
Right.
good thing for me to do. Yeah, but
Yeah.
anyway, well, I think that's great. I think that's also a great place to wrap. Tell us really quick, what do you have left? So, rocking and rolling winter. It's snowing out there. You've got some skiing left, I hope,
Yep,
in your
got some
season.
skiing, left for sure. It's as I said, it's snowing today, so I'm taking tomorrow off
Yeah,
to ski.
yeah, yeah.
We just got our latest edition of Cowboys and
I
Indians.
saw this online. Yeah, I haven't seen it in hand yet.
So we're very excited about that. We have a terrific designer from the Navajo Nation on the cover. And we're working on right now at Cowboys and Indians our outdoors issue. We do an outdoors issue once a year.
Cool.
And we do a little hunting, fishing. We talk about trail riding, all kinds of great stuff about what's going on in the West. So
Nice.
that's what we're into now.
Excellent. And when will that? Is it? How many issues a year? Is it six
We do
or
we do six, yeah. So
six?
so
Okay.
every other month, right? So the issue that is dropping out now that I just showed is the April May issue, and that'll be on newsstands by the third week of March, and the
Excellent.
outdoor issue will be this summer, June and July.
Cool. And so, and for folks that are interested in the magazine newsstands, it is available on newsstands,
It
and
is
then
it is
also
available on newsstands. You could also go to cowboysandindians.com. I'm sorry. Let me say that again. cowboysindians.com.
okay, all one word.
And
Cool.
yes, all one word. And that's our website where you can see a lot of our content, including the story I just mentioned, and you could get yourself a subscription. And that's
Nice.
what you should do
I know. I need
when
to.
we're done.
I'm going to do that as soon as we're off the phone. I'm going to get out my. I've got my wallet right here. I'm going to get out my credit card. The other thing I was going to say was, though, that you have a great Instagram
Oh,
presence for the
yeah,
magazine
thank
as
you.
well. Well, you do.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Personally,
yeah.
but
Oh, I thought you
the
were talking
magazine
about me.
is-
Thank you.
No,
Yes.
I
No,
do.
no, no.
I will say that there was a good one I was watching. I do watch yours because it's funny, but it's good. But I think it's you and your daughter do a lot of
Yeah,
skiing
mine's
together.
just for fun. It's just for
Right.
fun. There's nothing professional about it. It's just me
Right.
and my
No,
daughter
but
goofing around.
it was so great because I posted something the other day. It was you get on Facebook like memories or whatever, so little videos or pictures pop
Yeah.
up, and there was a video that popped up of me teaching my younger daughter to ride a two-wheeler, and I'm like chasing along behind her, and she totally eats it at the end. So I got all these comments of like, boy, you did a great job like keeping her from falling down, but I was sort of feeling sorry for myself about that. And then I was watching, I think it was the one that you posted of your daughter where she sort of like slid
It,
backwards.
it, it wasn't her. It was my friend's son. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we had him dropping off of a pretty steep little chute through a couple of
Yeah.
rocks.
Yeah.
And yeah, he didn't stick the landing, but that's all
No,
right. That's part of
just
skiing.
like yard sale, like stuff going every which way. He just kept on sliding.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't. It didn't look like he was hurt, but it was just.
No,
funny to
he
see.
wasn't hurt at all.
Yeah,
No, that's
yeah,
part
yeah.
of it. So
That was pretty good.
yeah, but we do
Excellent.
have a good Instagram for Cowboys and Indians too. So check
Yeah.
that out, and you can
Yeah,
see
no, it's
lots
very,
all the
very
stuff
good.
we're doing.
Yeah, and some cool stuff about rodeo and well, the whole just
Yeah.
lifestyle out there is very
Yeah.
cool. So, well, thank you. Certainly appreciate your time. Always great to catch up, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll connect here one of these days when the
Yeah. I hope we
when
can
the weather
be
gets
hunting together soon, Reed. Absolutely.
it'd
And
be
I
really
really
special.
appreciate you having me on. It
Oh,
was
I
great.
love
It's a
this,
great
and I love hearing
podcast.
about yeah. There's very few. The last thing I will say is that there are very few people who have that perspective. I think from the positions that you were in over the arc of time that you were in them.
Yeah.
Really, a lot happened in that period of time. So it's
Yeah.
cool to hear the history from someone that was
For
there.
sure.
Yeah.
Next time we talk, I'll tell you about the bar cart that used to go around the two park office
Ooh, that one and
at
the other
four
one I
o'clock
didn't.
on Fridays.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I would love to hear that. And the other one that I really want to hear about that I should have remembered. I should have had on my notes here was the post you put up where it was a picture of you and Lee Chose and some other folks walking away from some very very heavily armed fellas in Mexico somewhere.
Yes,
I don't know.
yes.
So
We were hunting coos deer in Sonora and ran into some cartel soldiers who were also working on the property, and so
I,
we gave them a couple of beers, a couple of cigarettes, told them what trucks we were driving that were just hunting, and they said great. They said if you get another one, hang a hind quarter for us in this tree. We're like okay.
right, right, off we go. Yeah, that was a good one. But you all looked very cool under pressure. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Very good. Excellent. Well, Tony Licata, thank you so much. Wonderful having you on the podcast. And for listeners, remember you can always reach out with questions, comments, and thoughts to huntingpodcast@orvis.com. You can also, if you would, in fact, this is more of a request than an opportunity, rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you listen on. We're going to we do have video of this one. I'm trying to get these video podcasts uploaded to our YouTube channel, but that's a work in progress. But this will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the places you listen. So, Tony, thank you. Stay on the line. Listeners, thank you. And please do rate and review the podcast.